Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this special session, Business at OECD and its impact on global trade. I'm honored to guide through this important conversation. Today, we will explore how Business at OECD supports global trade through the voice of the private sector and how it helps shape international policies with an inclusive and sustainable approach. To begin, a place to introduce Mr. Fernando Treviño, Executive Board Member of Business at OECD. Fernando, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning and good afternoon to all. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this special session on behalf of the Business at OECD. Today, we bring together voices from across the public and private sector to discuss a key topic: how we can shape global trade in a way that is more sustainable and more responsible to today's challenges. In BIAC, we believe that business has a vital role to play in designing the policies that impact our economies and our jobs and our future. Through our engagement with the OECD and our growing cooperation with Latin America and the Caribbean, we're creating spaces for dialogue and action. I'm especially proud that today we will also highlight the work of our Latin American and Caribbean contact group, a regional effort to bring business perspective from our part of the world into global policy discussions. Thank you all for being here. I look forward to the valuable insight we will share today. Let's begin.
Thank you, Fernando. Now we will hear from someone who plays a key role in this mission. Please welcome Mrs. Hanni Rosenbaum, Executive Director of Business at OECD, and her team. She will tell us some more about the organization and how it works with governments to support open markets and better trade policies. Hanni, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the kind invitation to participate in today's meeting. Just like to note that I'm here with Dominic Kummerle, who's our trade expert, who would be very pleased to also come into the discussion, and Laura Jane, who also works here at Business at OECD in Paris. Yeah, as you mentioned, I will first say a few words about what is Business at OECD, how we engage with the OECD on trade in particular, and then why the OECD work matters for business in all areas. Next one. Yeah, very briefly, we're just getting the slides ready. Okay, great. Just very briefly, a few words about the OECD, which, as many of you know, was founded in 1961, which provides a very important forum for now 38 member governments and an increasing number of non-member economies to work together to address economic, social, and environmental challenges. Let me just say what makes the OECD unique is that it brings together like-minded countries which are market-based and which are democracies. Now, we as Business at OECD, or BIAC, were founded in 1962, just a few months after the creation of the OECD. And our raison d'etre is really to make sure that business considerations in OECD policymaking are taken into account in all different areas. What makes us unique is really that we participate in OECD policymaking from the very early stages to high-level ministerial meetings and implementation of important instruments. And we do that across all different policy areas. Now, our global network is really what makes us so strong. Our members include the national business and employees organizations of all OECD countries. And let me just say that we are extremely proud to count COPARMEX as one of our core members. COPARMEX joined us in 1994, just shortly after Mexico joined the OECD. Now, we also have an increasing number of business organizations from non-OECD economies, in particular from all OECD accession countries, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And we're also very pleased to have more than 60 international sector organizations. So our input is really comprehensive, cutting across sectors and including companies both large and small. Now, just a few words about why the OECD matters for business. So let me just make 6 points, actually. First, the OECD is important because it shares best practice policy. And this is really important to raise the bar, to show countries what works and what doesn't work, and with this improve the business environment around the globe. Second, the OECD provides strategic foresight for long-term challenges, be it on infrastructure, health, climate change, or development. And let me just mention that both OECD and Business at OECD are represented at the Seville Forum on Finance for Development. This long-term strategic foresight is important both for governments and for business because we need to plan for the long term. Third, the OECD encourages domestic policy reform. This is really at the heart of what the OECD does. The OECD fosters regulatory quality, it fosters regulatory simplification, and it addresses fragmentation of regulation. So all this is hugely important for a pro-business policy environment. The OECD also has an important role in setting international standards. These standards range from binding conventions like the OECD Anti-Bribery Convention to a great number of recommendations, which, although they are non-binding, have high political standing in important areas such as responsible business conduct, investment, taxation, and digital, to name just a few. And last but not least, let me mention that the OECD has a very important role in supporting global governance and works as a provider of fact-based policy recommendations to the G20, G7, WTO, UN, etc. And let me just mention on this occasion that Business at OECD is also a proud network partner to the B20, the Business 20, which provides the business perspective to the G20. Now, our work is really structured through our policy groups. We have 30 policy groups in total in the following, we call them families, around economic governance, open markets. We'll talk about that in further detail today, which includes trade, investment, but also specific policy issues such as export credit and anti-illicit trade. We do a lot of work on taxation, responsible business conduct, skills and employment, innovation and digital, environment and green growth, food and health. And then we are very proud to have a number of regional programs, such as the Latin America program. And Fernando, let me thank you again very much for your leadership and strategic guidance in this very important area. Now, let me also just say a few words about OECD enlargement, which is also very important for improving the business environment. At the moment, there are 8 countries that would like to join the OECD, the so-called accession countries. We have 3 from Europe, we have 3 from Latin America, that is Brazil, Peru, and Argentina. And most recently, Thailand and Indonesia also applied to join the OECD. Let me just underline that this is a very long-term, a rigorous process, because the countries that would like to join the OECD have to adhere to all the OECD instruments and to the good principles and best practices. So from the business community, we also see this as an opportunity to improve the business environment in these accession countries. We are therefore very closely working with the business organizations in all accession countries, and we are also collecting feedback from our national member organizations on obstacles and challenges that they encounter in, for example, investing in these accession countries. So we are very pleased to include feedback from COPARMEX members already, and we will keep you informed of further opportunities to provide input. Now, let me now turn to trade, and let me start with a few words about the recent OECD Ministerial Council meeting, which took place in Paris at the beginning of June. Let me just say it was one of the biggest Ministerial Council meetings the OECD has had, with close to 50 ministers from finance, trade, and economics. So a hugely important meeting, in particular at the current moment in time where trade and economic policy faces considerable challenges. The OECD presents a hugely important forum to continue dialogue and discussion. And again, Fernando, thank you very much for joining us for this very important meeting as well. Now, on the occasion of the ministerial meeting, the OECD always issues an economic outlook, and I just included here like a few charts from this economic outlook, which focused on uncertainty and reviving trade. So there was a lot of discussion on trade, of course, in light of the recent decisions by the US. So here, just like a few slides, you can see here the global growth, how it was kind of like holding up despite the policy announcement, but then you can see like at the end, it starts going down. On the second slide, you can see on the second chart, so you can see the trade, how trade uncertainty has increased a lot in 2025. And then on the right-hand side, you see the direct exposure to US tariff increases. And unfortunately, Mexico and Canada, which are very, very closely linked to the US, of course, are at the top. So that's not good news, but it's good to have the facts, that the OECD puts the facts on the table. Let me just also mention that the OECD has estimated that US growth will also go down actually to 1.6% in 2025 and 1.5% in 2026. So the US is actually also impacted by its own measures, which create economic uncertainty and trade barriers. Of course, it always goes in both directions. So it was a good wake-up call and a very important wake-up call. So now, in light of these challenges, we strongly believe that the work on trade, the dialogue on trade that happens at the OECD is more important than ever. The OECD has a fundamental role to bring countries together and make sure that the dialogue continues. Let me just say that the OECD, since it was created back in 1961, has always demonstrated a strong commitment for open markets, for rules-based multilateral trading systems, and it has annually, on the occasion of the Ministerial Council meetings, also has these mini trade ministerials, which are hugely important to bring ministers together. Now, 2 years ago, the OECD also developed its first trade strategy, and that was like very new. It was really the OECD Council getting together and said we should have our own trade strategy. Now, just to highlight 3 overarching objectives. One is, of course, on strengthening multilateralism, which is something where the OECD has worked on for a long time. This involves supporting WTO reform with data and analysis on issues such as digital trade, services, or environment. And then, of course, focusing on ensuring a level playing field in government support policies. Let me just mention, this is an issue the US government is also very much interested in, and we look to the OECD to really bring in more transparency in government support policies around the world, including, of course, China. Now, second point on resilient supply chains. This is something which, of course, came to the forefront during the COVID time, where the OECD embarked on a lot of really fantastic, fact-based, useful work on supply chain resilience. Today, the OECD has dedicated work on a number of specific sectors, from medical, food, semiconductors, critical minerals, which is hugely important. The OECD also advocates diversification in numerous sectors, which is something which is very close to our heart. And the OECD issued the 4 keys to resilient supply chains to guide public-private collaboration. And then on the occasion of the Ministerial Council meeting, the OECD issued a new publication on supply chain resilience, a review and navigating risk. And let me just say, in this review, we were very pleased to find many messages from business in there, like the need to diversify, addressing trade barriers, trade infrastructure and digitization. So we're very pleased that the OECD took up a number of our points on this very important area. And then the third point where the OECD is very active is on sustainability in trade. Here they also look a lot at links to responsible business conduct. And just to mention that the OECD has a fundamental key instrument in place, which is the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises on responsible business conduct. Here, I have to say the contribution of business is hugely important to make sure that the due diligence expectations to companies do not go beyond. And we would very much like the OECD to actually launch a new analysis on the impact of responsible business conduct and due diligence obligations on companies and for international trade. And then there's also like now work on carbon footprint measurement in the context of discussions on carbon border adjustment, which have been launched in several parts of the world. Great. And then just on our trade committee, let me just say we would love to have additional participation from Mexico in our trade committee. Let me just say, I think it's now more important than ever at a time where there's like a lot of discussion about how the US trade policies impact different countries. And as mentioned before, unfortunately, the neighboring countries are very much impacted. So we have a fantastic committee in place, which meets biannually. and more often if needed. We also have a number of virtual meetings. We directly participate in a large part of the OECD Trade Committee meetings, which again is a fantastic platform to also talk with the trade negotiators and trade experts from around the world. We also participate in the Working Party on Trade Policy. And last but not least, I should mention, we also have fantastic dinners with the leadership of the OECD Trade Committee. And this also is a good platform for informal discussions. Now, our committee is chaired by Pat Ivory from IBEC, our Irish member organization, and supported by a number of vice chairs and members from around the world. Our committee is important. I mean, joining our committee will help you to get the information on the OECD trade work. It will also allow you to help build consensus among private sector members on our trade positions. You can contribute to our business priorities and strategic messages of the Trade Committee, but also like in the broader high-level BIAC messaging, because trade is always on the agenda. And finally, you can help contribute to shaping the OECD's trade agenda. Let me just say that we have a very close and a very good relationship with the OECD Trade Committee, and we can really move things. So in closing, I think I'm coming to the almost last slide. Just a few words about COPARMEX engagement. We are very pleased and very honored to have 60 corporate representatives from COPARMEX and 11 COPARMEX staff members in all of our committees. We are very pleased, very honored to have Fernando Treviño as our executive board member. Fernando, thank you so much for your strategic guidance. And Fernando also chairs our Latin America expert group, which again is hugely important to spread all the good messages from the OECD to Latin America, to our members, but also to the non-members. So thank you very much for this. And last but not least, thank you very much for the opportunity. If you would like to contact us for any further questions, you can contact us at this email address, communications@biac.org, or directly to me or any of my colleagues. So thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions. As I said, I'm here with Dominic, who's our trade expert, and and we look forward to have you on board in the Trade Committee going forward. Thank you again.
Thank you, Hanni, for that insightful presentation. We now open the floor for a brief Q&A. If you have any questions, feel to raise your hand or write them in the chat. Okay, we have no questions. So if you
maybe I can just take the opportunity and just follow up on what Hanni has just outlined. I think in the current situation where we have this increasing uncertainty and where we have just presented the agenda, the 3 key pillars at the OECD, we are, however, also in this organization at a critical time. The agenda that you have just seen, the one that said support of multilateralism, building resilient supply chains, advancing sustainability in trade, that was agreed by consensus in 2022. However, you won't be surprised that there are the question whether in 2025 this agenda is actually still valid. And I mean, just from a strategic point of view, what might be interesting for you to understand is that 10 years ago, the OECD was almost exclusively focused on the first pillar. That was building support for multilateralism and supporting the reform of the rule book at the WTO. At least in the last 5 years, the work stream on building resilient supply chain has gained significant momentum, and in a way it resembles potentially the realization that it will be very difficult to arrive at a reform of the WTO in a tangible short time frame. Yeah. So I think it shows that the concerns raised by the Trump administrations are not new. Yeah, these discussions have been in the loop for a long time, and the OECD is also doing its very best to restructure and to ensure, again, fairness in trade and the level playing field, which is in a way the concern that is being raised by the US administration. In case this might not be possible, we will see, and we hope to see, that the OECD can play a very important role in helping companies by encouraging governments to build frameworks that allow for more diversification, that allow for more flexible supply chains, and that allow again also for different supplier and consumer bases going forward. That is just the minimum of what we can say. But I just wanted to highlight a little bit this strategic shift that we have witnessed in the OECD agenda again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Hanni. ¿Hay alguna pregunta en el público para ellos?
No, ninguna, Fernando.
Okay, I would like to make a question. Hanni, in today's shifting trade environment with tension, nearshoring, and digital trade, what role does business at OECD play in shaping a balanced global agenda? Could you talk something about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think that very much responds to this theme of building resilient supply chains. The idea that we are living now in a more geopolitically dynamic world. So how can we avoid shocks? And if these shocks happen, how can we ensure that our supply chains rebound quickly? In that context, I think there is the idea of some governments that if you nearshore or onshore activities, you will inherently have a greater capability to avoid shocks. Avoiding the idea that shocks can also come from within a country, and of course, ignoring to a certain extent that the separation of labor globally is one that has enabled significant economic efficiency gains. In that context, the OECD has released at the Ministerial Council meeting a flagship report on building resilient supply chains that was making a very, very clear case that nearshoring is not necessarily the right way forward, but that building options for diversification requires broadening regional alternatives. In that context, the OECD has taken a very clear stance, and we are very glad and happy as BIAC that we have been working with the OECD for years. Starting at the outset of the COVID pandemic, for example, we shared over 40 specific business case studies highlighting what companies actually need on the ground and what they don't need, which has helped the OECD to come up with the narrative, to build this narrative based on evidence and a real understanding of what the business community needs. So we're very happy that we have constructively engaged and had shaped this narrative that the OECD is now mainstreaming with governments across the planet.
Thank you. I have another question from Ana Sofia from FEMSA. Does BIAC generate trade environmental materials?
The discussion on trade and the environment is also a very, very critical one. There are just various aspects that are, of course, under consideration, which ranges, first of all, I think, and maybe I take a step back first. Hanni has highlighted at the outset that we are dealing with quite a number of policy families, and the first step for trade and environment is actually building more coherent national strategies and more coherent national regulations and avoiding fragmentation among countries. Because if you have different countries trying out different regulations, there is, of course, an inherent risk that different countries on the planet are running in different directions. So the first starts with ensuring that we all do our domestic homework, and the environment ministries also coordinate, so it doesn't become the core issue of trade and it doesn't lead to trade tensions. That is, of course, in a way our wish, but not necessarily the reality that we are seeing. So today we're particularly on climate change. We have the EU CBAM on due diligence. We have increasing expectations for companies to ensure that their supply chains are environmentally sustainable. We have questions about the circular economy and about waste trade. So there are various aspects that the OECD has been addressing. Within BIAC, we have been cautioning the OECD and governments to advance with trade initiatives that might include a bias and that are not necessarily scientifically based. So a key point in the discussion on climate change is therefore also the question on how you measure certain carbon intensities on carbon metrics, and ensuring that these technical issues are timely, granular, accurate, while not overburdening the business community. And that is also a key issue for us, that we ensure also proportionality while we ensure closer alignment and avoid discrimination in that field.
Okay, thank you. I have another question from José Luis Rocha Rodriguez. According with the OECD, what is the Mexican quota about the supply chain? And I have another from Humberto Blancarte. Does the OECD have any program support industrial water reuse from short-term implementation?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. We can get back to you on the specifics regarding the supply chain and FODA. We would need to look into it. I don't know it out of the back of my head, but we can review also what the OECD has been producing on that issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe just like a word on like the most urgent trade issues where public-private collaboration is needed right now. I mean, I think from the business side, we should really push the OECD to continue its very good analysis of the impact of tariffs, right? I mean, I think we just need this fact-based, and countries need this fact-based analysis to base their decisions on. And hopefully the words will be heard one day, and we shouldn't give up. So, I mean, the analysis on the impact of tariffs remains crucially important. I would also say the word on resilience of supply chains that also must continue its high on the agenda. And then in general, like help create a more global level playing field for trade and investment around the world.
Yeah. If I can just continue on that, and here again to come back to the strategic setting of the OECD. What we can anticipate at the OECD going forward is maybe there will be more things that divide the OECD's like-minded membership, but there is one thing that they will still have in common, and that is the issues that they face with the outside world. And again, just to recall that key countries such as China, such as India, and others are not part of the OECD. And there has been a very, very active work stream on industrial support measures. And this is not per se an anti-China work stream, but every time the OECD does a report on specific supply chain, be it on the aluminium supply chain, be it on below market energy input, be it on below market finance, be it on photovoltaics and wind manufacturing, there are always significant issues that they find with how China is supporting its economy in ways that are not currently covered by the rule book of the WTO. And that is certainly a key work stream that the new US administration remains interested in. And we may also see a slightly shift in tone in the European Union on the issue. So there is a likelihood that going forward, the OECD may agree on a stronger stance together in tackling these measures from third countries.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Before I begin, I would like to extend a very warm greetings to Ms. Hanni Rosenbaum, Executive Director of Business at OECD, and her team, Dominica and Julia. Dear Hanni, I thank you so much for joining us today. We are especially grateful for your continued collaboration with COPARMEX and your support in encouraging more Mexican companies to participate actively in the work of the business at OECD. Your leadership, openness, and enthusiasm have been key to building bridges between the business community in Latin America and the OECD. And it's truly a pleasure to work together. We deeply valued not only your guidance, but also the spirit of the partnership that you're fostering in every conversation. Thank you very much. Buenos días a todos. Es un gusto, un placer. Sorry, Hanni, allow me to.
Of course, I just want to say thank you very much, and it's a great honor and pleasure to be part of the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gracias.
Okay, bye-bye. Gracias.
You're still here, please. You're still here for the meeting. Okay, buenos días a todos. Es un placer presentarles el trabajo de nuestro grupo de contacto de América Latina y el Caribe, el LAC, que tengo el honor de presidir desde su creación en 2024. Como ustedes saben, los miembros del BIAC son las principales organizaciones empresariales de los países que pertenecen a la OCDE y de los países en procesos de adhesión. En mi caso, yo soy también vicepresidente nacional de COPARMEX México, encargado de asuntos internacionales y laborales, y bueno, hoy, como lo decía Hanni, miembro de la Junta Ejecutiva del Business at OECD y encargado del grupo, presido el grupo de América Latina. Entonces es un enorme gusto que COPARMEX sea uno de los miembros claves de la OCDE, del BIAC, y de nuestro grupo de contacto para América Latina y el Caribe. Que quiero darle las gracias por la oportunidad de poder presentarles este trabajo de este grupo de América Latina, y yo les animo a que participen de forma activa, ya que para nosotros es muy importante contar con presencia y participación del sector empresarial mexicano y latinoamericano. En este caso, pues nos toca la parte de México. Los invito verdaderamente a que se acerquen con nosotros a través de la COPARMEX para que sus empresas puedan participar. Me parece que es importante la aportación que puedan hacer a todo este esfuerzo. Y voy a centrar mi intervención en alrededor de los 3 siguientes ejes: la información general sobre el grupo, los objetivos y los próximos pasos y líneas de trabajo. Primero, sobre la información general del grupo. Este grupo se creó en febrero del 2024 con el objetivo de dar voz al sector empresarial latinoamericano ante la OCDE y de dar a conocer el trabajo y recomendaciones de la OCDE en la región. Como mencioné, el BIAC representa las principales federaciones empresariales de los países de la OCDE y de los países candidatos de adhesión. Por ende, si son miembros de COPARMEX, pueden participar en nuestros grupos de trabajo y el grupo de contacto de América Latina. Actualmente el grupo cuenta ya con más de 100 personas registradas, entre el personal de federaciones empresariales mencionadas, así como empresas. Nuestra próxima reunión va a tener efecto el 16 de julio y estarían todos invitados a participar. Quiero presentar los 4 objetivos generales de este grupo. Primero, es el promover las mejores prácticas de la OCDE de América Latina. El actual panorama geopolítico y económico de América Latina y el Caribe, en este existe una necesidad urgente de acercar iniciativas del BIAC y de la OCDE a la región. Por ello buscamos dar voz a la realidad empresarial en la región y participamos en los eventos relevantes de la OCDE, como el LAC Forum, que tuvo lugar en París en junio. Este es el evento más importante de la OCDE, y de la cumbre ministerial de la OCDE, que tendrá lugar ahora en Asunción, del Latin American Contact Group, en Asunción los días 10 y 11 de noviembre. Aquí sería muy importante que si ustedes quisieran participar, pues pudieran acercarse con nosotros para registrarnos, ¿no? Esto será aquí en la región, entonces también llegar es más fácil. El segundo objetivo es el fortalecer la participación de los miembros y entonces la voz de las empresas de la región en la OCDE. La OCDE cuenta con numerosos programas relacionados con la región de América Latina y el Caribe, y es necesario, garantizar que se tenga debidamente en cuenta la perspectiva de las empresas que operan en la región y que las empresas también sean conscientes del valor que pueden generar las recomendaciones e informes para promover el desarrollo económico en América Latina y el Caribe. El tercero sería apoyar las discusiones de acceso a la OCDE. Actualmente 3 de los 8 países en proceso de adhesión a la OCDE son de América Latina, son Brasil, Perú y Argentina. El grupo BIAC de América Latina propone reforzar activamente su participación en las negociaciones para la adhesión de la OCDE, brindando oportunidades a los miembros de sus empresas y a sus empresas para contribuir y participar activamente en este importante proceso. Por ejemplo, en la primavera publicamos un informe sobre el clima de inversión en Perú y hoy tendrán la oportunidad, en estos momentos se tiene la oportunidad y se está discutiendo el proceso de adhesión de Argentina a la OCDE con interlocutores claves de la OCDE. De hecho, hace un par de días tuvimos un evento con la Cámara, la Cámara Argentina de Comercio, es la organización similar a la COPARMEX, su presidente y sus miembros del Consejo, que obviamente están muy interesados en que su país se adhiera finalmente a la OCDE, ¿no? Y el último punto es contribuir a la cumbre ministerial de la OCDE para América Latina y el Caribe. Y, por ejemplo, en 2024 participamos en la cumbre ministerial de la OCDE para América Latina y el Caribe y en Colombia, y organizamos nuestro segundo evento del BIAC de la OCDE en la región. Tenemos la intención de continuar nuestra participación activa en las próximas cumbres ministeriales y el BIAC organizará un evento en el contexto de la cumbre ministerial de la OCDE para América Latina y el Caribe, ahora en Asunción, como les decía yo hace un momento. Me gustaría finalmente destacar las próximas líneas de trabajo que nos permitirán alcanzar estos objetivos, y todos estos proyectos se presentarán durante nuestra próxima reunión del 16 de julio, la cual están todos invitados, es una reunión virtual. Y esto hablará de la versión final del documento de análisis sobre por qué la OECD o la OCDE es importante para América Latina y el Caribe. Este documento va a destacar los principales desafíos y oportunidades en América Latina y demostrará cómo la aplicación de las mejores prácticas de la OCDE puede impulsar significativamente el desarrollo económico, mejorar la coherencia de las políticas y mejorar el entorno empresarial de la región. Estamos particularmente agradecidos por Coparmex México en participar en este estudio. Y como ejemplo, el día de hoy estaré, por ejemplo, en Puebla con el secretario de Desarrollo Económico del Estado, hablando precisamente de cómo a través del BIAC podemos impulsar el desarrollo económico en el Estado de Puebla. Así es que también invito a que pudiéramos hacer esto en los distintos estados de ustedes se encuentran el día de hoy. El segundo punto sería la versión final del informe sobre el clima de inversión de la región en América Latina. El contenido de este informe se basará en una encuesta distribuida a los miembros de las empresas del BIAC. Se basa en una encuesta realizada a 30 empresas y federaciones empresariales de la red BIAC. Y buscamos identificar las principales preocupaciones y obstáculos relacionados con la inversión y establecer recomendaciones a la OCDE para mejorar las condiciones de la inversión en la región. Aquí podemos invitar a que si alguien quiere participar en esta encuesta nos lo haga saber y con mucho gusto podemos hacérselas llegar para tomar también los datos que ustedes tienen. El tercer punto es la organización de un evento paralelo del sector privado en el contexto de la cumbre ministerial de la OCDE en América Latina y el Caribe, que será en Paraguay del 10 al 12 de noviembre. Y la redacción de una declaración empresarial que se enviará antes de esta cumbre ministerial, la cual este año se centrará en las cuestiones de gobernanza. Así es que para establecer una línea de trabajo del segundo semestre de 2025, esta reunión también será una oportunidad para que nos presenten sus propuestas sobre posibles proyectos que el Grupo de Contacto de América Latina podría llevar a cabo. Para todas estas iniciativas, alentamos a las empresas mexicanas a ofrecer perspectivas únicas y a participar de forma activa. Es bien importante. Yo los invito a que entren a la página del BIAC-OECD y vean los cerca de 40 policy groups, grupos de trabajo, definan en qué grupo les interesaría participar y podemos hacer toda la gestión para la inclusión. Muchas gracias. A mí me gustaría saber en este sentido cuál es la opinión sobre este grupo de contacto de América Latina, si están, qué opinan de los objetivos generales y los proyectos que acabamos de comentar, si hay algún tema específico en el que les gustaría que nos centráramos durante este 2025, por ejemplo, pues el tema de informalidad, ¿no? Y bueno, gracias de nuevo por estar aquí, por su participación, escucha, y no duden, por favor, en contactarnos para saber más sobre el BIAC, involucrarse en este trabajo centrado en América Latina y el Caribe, que es el que pues, nos ocupa por la región donde nos encontramos. Si tienen algún comentario o alguna pregunta, con gusto estoy para servirlos. Muchas gracias.
Me parece, Fernando, que no tenemos preguntas ni tampoco manos levantadas.
Ok, bueno, pues sí.
Tenemos una de José Constantino. Adelante, por favor.
Hola Fernando, buenos días. Muchas gracias por la información que nos comentas. Soy José Constantino, presidente del capítulo universitario COPARMEX en la Universidad Intercontinental. Y respecto a lo que comentabas de la OECD, ¿de qué forma pudiéramos hacer para llevar esta información que tú me estás diciendo y de que se pudiera considerar la opinión de los jóvenes universitarios que tienen emprendimientos o que tienen empresas y que pudiéramos contribuir también desde ese aspecto? Muchas gracias.
Estás muteado, Fernando, no te escuchamos.
Te pediría, muchas gracias, José, por la pregunta. Te pediría que te acercaras con nosotros a la Coparmex. Me parece que sería muy importante la participación de los jóvenes y sobre todo todos aquellos que están emprendiendo y que puedan compartir cuáles son las dificultades que están teniendo al momento de emprender, lo que puede inhibir también el desarrollo económico en la región. Eh, yo creo que podríamos generar algún ejercicio junto con la Comisión de Jóvenes Empresarios de la Coparmex para presentar un proyecto digamos, de documento respecto de todo esto que les pasa a los jóvenes en nuestro país y en la región. Y me parece que ahí podríamos inclusive acercarnos a través de la Federación Iberoamericana de Jóvenes Empresarios, que también trabaja en la región, que es miembro de Coparmex y que es miembro de la COE, por ejemplo, de España, ambos organismos registrados y autorizados reconocidos por el BIAC, y con mucho gusto, digamos, tomar toda la muestra de la información que ustedes nos pudieran dar respecto a todas estas trabas en las que se enfrentan y poderlas presentar, ¿no? Y inclusive trabajar una forma conjunta con el BIAC para hacer llegar esto al secretario general de la OCDE y que intente influir, porque es muy importante, fíjate, lo que acabas de comentar, ¿no? Entonces, encantado, José. Por favor, yo le pediría a Alberto López que nos dejes tus contactos, nos los mandes ahorita por el WhatsApp y Beto te estará contactando, por favor. Muchas gracias.
Listo. ¿Tendremos alguna otra pregunta o algún comentario? Tenemos un comentario en el chat, Fernando. Lo leo rápidamente. Dice, la OCDE se está latinoamericanizando por el próximo ingreso de Brasil, Argentina y Perú. ¿Qué temas consideras que se deben poner más énfasis en el desarrollo del sector empresarial bajo la lente regional?
Bueno, primero, efectivamente, comentar que si bien es cierto, Brasil, eh, Argentina y Perú están en un proceso de adhesión, como bien lo comentas, Leticia, quien entiendo yo que va más avanzado en este momento es Argentina. Eh, digamos, y es con quien en este momento o en estas últimas semanas hemos estado trabajando. Hay temas bien importantes en la región, ¿no? Temas, por ejemplo, de informalidad, temas de migración, temas relacionados con la energía eh, y un sinfín de temas que nos afectan como región, ¿no? Eh, Desafortunadamente, pues nuestra región sufre en muchos casos de los mismos males, así es que es muy fácil, digamos, comprendernos mutuamente y aquí el objetivo sería que fortalezcamos nuestro trabajo conjunto entre los distintos países y el objetivo de nosotros en el BIAC es precisamente generar pues toda esta información y documentación que podamos estar presentando a través del BIAC al secretario general de la OCDE para que a su vez influya o trate de influir en estos países, ¿no? Entonces, sí hay muchos temas, sería interesante si tú estás, disculpa la redundancia, pero si tú estás interesada en participar en alguno de estos, también acercarse con nosotros precisamente para ver en qué grupo nos podrías ayudar, ¿no? Es bien interesante que entren a los grupos que presentaba Hanni hace un momento respecto del BIAC, porque son exactamente los mismos grupos los que estaríamos y estamos con los que estamos trabajando, ¿no? Entonces también podemos tomar buenas prácticas de algunos otros países miembros de la OCDE y tratar de influir, porque al final ese es el efecto, ¿no? Siempre nos estamos midiendo, digamos, frente a lo que es la media que tiene la OCDE, ¿no? Entonces, esa medición nos ayuda mucho a poder determinar dónde estamos como región, ¿no? Muchas gracias.
Listo, Fernando, el tiempo avanzado, si te parece bien, podemos empezar a cerrar la sesión.
Muy bien, pues muchas gracias a todos por su participación esta mañana en el marco de estas juntas internacionales. Thank you very much to Hanni and her team. Hanni, again, thank you for joining us today and for your unwavering commitment to strengthening the voice of business globally. Thank you for the continued collaboration with COPARMEX and effort and support, encouraging more Mexican companies to participate actively in the work of business at OECD. Thank you, your team, Dominic and Julia, for being here. Y muchas gracias a todos ustedes por haberse conectado el día de hoy en nombre de nuestro presidente nacional, Juan José Sierra, y a nombre del presidente de la Consejería Delegada de Juntas Internacionales, Frank Siller. Les damos las gracias por habernos acompañado el día de hoy. Muchas gracias. Muy buenos días. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gracias.